Hello fellow chatterers and book worshippers, and anyone else who has popped in because you're curious or lost. I'm Chatty and welcome back to my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter. And today I will be talking through all of the books that I read in the final week of April. Week 4 of April has now finished. I was hoping to film this on Saturday the 30th, but for one thing or another it didn't happen. So it's now actually Monday the 2nd of May, but hey ho. Please do pause the video and just have a read through of the description box, because the books I'm going to talk about, for some of them I will be doing a few spoilers to just kind of talk more about my thoughts on them. So if you don't want those particular books spoilt for you, look at the timestamps where I talk about when I start talking spoilers and when I finish talking spoilers. So this is another one shot, no editing, weekly wrap up. So in my week 3 wrap up, I'll leave a little link to all of my wrap up videos so far in case you wanted to see the other books. I spoke about the fact that I had 6 books that I wanted to get through. They are all here, ready and waiting. So I will talk through which ones I did and which ones I didn't manage to finish. And I am really proud of myself because that was a bit of a massive order. So I did manage to continue and finish the 3 books I was in the process of reading. I also managed to start and finish 2 books, and I started and I'm currently reading 1 book. And I mean really just barely started. I've read like the first couple of chapters and that's it for that one. So overall, very happy with myself and the readathons that I managed to do. So I'm also going to wrap up where I am with those 2 readathons. So that is the Magical Readathon Orilium and the Realmathon. So the first book that I want to talk about is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is a YA dystopia. And this book has been on my radar for a really long time. When I first started watching BookTube, so many people were either saying it was one of their favourites, books that they had previously read, or they were currently reading it and enjoying it. So it definitely went on my wish list, and finally I gifted myself the trilogy for Christmas. So this is the first book in the Scythe trilogy, and I was reading it on Evie's Discord. She was only Evie, where it was going to be sort of like read a book a month, but now it's just a kind of read at your own pace and kind of chat whenever you want to type of situation. So I've shared my thoughts and I'm looking forward to sharing more. So we follow the 2 main characters. I don't know if it is Cytra or Kytra. I'm calling her Cytra, but apologies if that's wrong. And Rowan, who are both called on to be apprentice Scythe. So in this world, we have the mortal age, which is us that we're living now, and the post-mortal age, where humanity has advanced. They have learnt everything they need to learn to the point that they have conquered death. So nobody dies now of old age, and nobody, even if you get caught in an accident or something like that, they can bring you back to life. So the only way that you can actually die is to be gleaned by a scythe. They've explored all options for like furthering resources and space and failed in all of them. So human culling is something that now needs to happen in this book, which I thought was a really fascinating premise and was a thing that hooked me in. So I really enjoy all of the kind of dystopian world in here and the things that it explores. So all of that kind of morality and humanity exploration with what happens if we've learned everything there is to learn, we no longer fear death, and how that has an impact on us and how we live our life. So when you feel like there's nothing else to strive for, are you living your best life, being empowered and passionate about things, or are you just pleasantly enjoying yourself, and which way is the best way to do it, which was all really fascinating in here. I thought the world building was brilliant. It was very much it was really well explained, so you were immersed from the get-go. I didn't feel there were any info dump moments. I felt it was very much like the author had taken your hands and was guiding you and navigating you through this world, and you organically learnt more about it. And I really liked the way that something would happen, and as a mortal world person of the mortal generation, I would react very differently to the way that the people of the post-mortal generation did, because of I'm not aware of the advanced technology they have to deal with things like that. So I found that all really, really interesting. They also look at kind of the cost of being a scythe and the politics of being a scythe, and that whole passion and compassion aspect, whether you should feel incredibly guilty for your role in this or whether you should embrace your role. And it was really, really interesting. I also really liked both of the main characters. I liked their own personal journeys. I liked the character relationship. If you are someone that one of your buzzwords is trials, this book has trials. There are 3 trials. It's not a huge part of the book, but it is like the points. It's like leading up to the first one, leading up to the second, leading up to the third. So that if you're thinking of picking up this one and that's one of your buzzwords, then you may really enjoy this. I'm definitely keen to keep reading this series. I had a great time with this book. The second book, Thunderhead, I think explores a different part of this world, and then the final one, The Toll, I think we catch up with these characters and characters of Thunderhead. I could be totally wrong, because I like to go in knowing as little as possible about these books. But yeah, I had a really great time with books. I really liked the secondary characters in here. I was very intrigued that, very surprised, I think is a better word. As usually, like in the dystopia books, you very much have this feeling of you want to kind of, it's sold as a utopia, but we know it's a dystopia, and the main characters feel dissatisfied and want to take it down. Whereas in this one, it wasn't quite like that. It was more about the politicking within the Scythedom than the actual world itself, that I found really interesting. So yeah, and it also felt like the story did feel rounded off. There's definitely a place for more in this world, but with dystopias that are in a trilogy, I do feel that they kind of like will leave it on a certain point and then you know that it's going to keep going. Whereas this one, it did feel like it could be a standalone. It did feel very well rounded off. So that's interesting. So these are the 2 books that I have been working on and off throughout the month. The Wife's Tale was the book that I rolled for as a punishment read for myself, to read a more challenging book. That was my punishment for incorrectly predicting the game, Alan from the Library of Alexandria's game, Jeopardy, Book Jeopardy. I put my hypothetical money on Kate, Kate the Book Doctor, and so therefore I had to, she didn't win, so I had to read a punishment book, and this was the one that came up because it's not my usual reading zone. I thought I was probably going to cry throughout this. I thought it was going to be really hard reading, and I thought it could very well be a bit of a struggle. It was a struggle, but it wasn't as emotionally impactful as I thought it was going to be. So I thought this was going to be more of like a memoir style. I really like the emotions of the characters. That's kind of how I read. I'm a very character-based reader, and this was on one hand telling the story of Yetta Megnu's life. So it's being written by Ada Ed Mariam, her granddaughter, and is telling the story of her life from her as a child, and also like her parents and how they met, and then up to the death of her grandma. But at the same time, it's also looking at the Ethiopian history within that time period as well. So it's kind of a mixture of 2. And that's why I think it didn't work for me, because I either wanted it to be one or the other. I didn't want this blend of almost like a fictional telling with historical lessons in it. I found it a little, I wasn't able to connect with it. I either needed the more memoir style of emotions and really following this person, like I kind of got through Maya Angelou's autobiographies, or I need it to be more of a non-fiction full-on factual book where it has headings and subheadings and bullet points and things that allow me to retain that information a lot better. So unfortunately it didn't work for me on that particular platform. But if you enjoy reading historical books, if it kind of the blend of the fiction and history sounds like it works for you, then you probably will really enjoy it. you know, it was written well. There were lots of fascinating things in it. I've learnt stuff, but I feel it's going to trickle out my brain because it wasn't written in a way for me to retain it, for me to retain that information. So Yetemengu's, she is married early as a child, and then we hear about just kind of like those key points in her life. So obviously the author used a lot of interviews of her grandma while she was alive, and then other people, and kind of anecdotes, as well as history that she had to read up on. So she's done a huge amount of research for this book. But I think for me, I wanted more of those gaps filled in. I wanted it to be kind of more of historical fiction, or I wanted it to be a history book. I think I wanted it to be one or the other. I found it quite jarring when you were at a really kind of like poignant emotional moment, whether that was a difficult birth and kind of recovery from that, and mental health moment, or a really challenging part in her marriage, or some really like crucial emotional moments. But it felt like it would jump from one bit to the next. So it's like one moment she's just about to give birth, and then it's several months down the line and we're hearing that everything was fine. So it because obviously she didn't have information to fill that point, and she wants it to be as truthful a portrait as possible. But for a reader reading the story in the way I read, it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. So that was a shame, but I read through it and I got to the end. What really helped me was, I think, two things. I got to a point where Yetemegnu needed a lot of agency to try and really push herself to go and solve, to appear in court a lot and kind of request that her rights are righted and appear before important people, asking for their support in certain things. And I also listened to the audiobook because I suddenly thought, hold on, I'm struggling with this, therefore audiobook. And I really recommend, if a book's not working for you, if you're not feeling engaged with it, having an audiobook is so helpful, because you then get something else to draw you in. You get that extra sense, you get that voice, and you get the emotions of the storyteller bringing you into the story more. So I found that really helped. It really gave Yetemegnu a more of a she brought her to life a lot more. There was more emotion in there. It didn't feel as dry to me when I heard the narrator. I'm really sorry, I can't remember who narrated it, but it was on the script. I heard the narrator, and the passion she put into it, it really brought it to life a lot more. It was much more vivid for me. Sadly, I was planning on I don't use audiobooks a huge amount. I just use them for stories I struggle with, or ones that I've already read. I don't like to use them for new ones because I like to immerse myself in it and have more control that way. Whereas the narrator has the control and you have to kind of go along with it. So I was just going to try script for a little bit because I didn't want to take it into another month. I wanted to kind of stop it. And within that time, I've lost my bank card. I got a new one. So the details I had on. So I got this message saying, your bank, we can't access your bank account. So until you change your details, you can't listen to script anymore. And it was the last day, and I was like, oh well. So I had to power weed through on Saturday to finish this off. And the same with the Lord of the Rings as well. So I feel proud of myself. I've done this one. Recommend the audiobook. It wasn't for me, sadly. So The Two Towers was a reread. This is the second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is an epic fantasy series by J.R.R. Tolkien. I loved my reread of The Fellowship of the Ring. I really enjoyed my reread of The Two Towers. There were so many bits in here that I absolutely loved. I don't think I loved it quite as much as The Fellowship of the Ring, just because I think with this one, I thought this one was going to be my favourite, but I actually think Return of the King is my favourite, and I think I merged them together and also got confused with the film. So I first read this when I was a teenager, after I'd watched the first film. Me and my friends really enjoyed it. We were talking about it a lot. Both me and one of my best friends, Becky, we read The Fellowship of the Ring. And then we started reading The Two Towers, and I just have so many memories of before school chatting to her in the playground. Have you got to this point yet? Have you got to this point? And just talking about it. So before I knew buddy read was a thing, me and Becky were buddy reading The Lord of the Rings, which was amazing. So we read these back to back. Having finished this, I absolutely know why we read them back to back, because it really ends on such a moment. And I think I've merged them together, as well as having watched the Lord of the Rings films and rewatched those. Some bits from the book The Two Towers are shown in The Return of the King because of the timeline, and they wanted to have it, all the different character stories on the same timeline. So I think I've got them all mushed up a little bit in my head. I just need to go and check on my children. Okay. So there were things that I was expecting that actually happen in Return of the King. Oh yes, and I listened to this on audio narrated by Andy Serkis, who is incredible. I absolutely highly recommend the Andy Serkis audiobook. I loved hearing his voice. I thought he did it so well. Each of the characters is so clear, and his Faramir is different but sounds similar to Boromir. When he's talking as some of the characters, he's getting them to retell their story, and he does that character but doing the voice of another character, and I just think it's so clever. I just think it's so well done. It is just amazing. The voice talent of Andy Serkis is absolutely fantastic. So one of the things that I mentioned before in The Fellowship of the Ring that I really love, that I don't think I appreciated when I was a teenager, was how much this book is about the love of stories and storytelling and myths and legends, and sort of like that, sitting around the fire, entertaining yourselves by telling a great yarn. I love that about these books, and it is loved across all the cultures, I think, in here, apart from orcs, but we don't count them. Particularly the hobbits, they love a little bit of storytelling, and there were so many there's so many moments that I laugh in this and just enjoy through this. So it's brilliant, and I very much appreciate the books for the books and the film for the film, and the different decisions they made from the film that needed to work as a film as opposed to the book. So I'm just going to talk about a few of those. So this is where I get into spoilers. So if you've not seen the films, not read the book, leave and come back when I told you to read the description. So in the film, one of the things that still pains me is Faramir's storyline. So reading the books, I absolutely loved Faramir for his reaction to the ring. I love the concept of the overlooked younger brother that proved to be the stronger mentally, though possibly not physically. And just that understanding and great depth, and that relationship he had with Frodo, kind of talking through, you know, I wouldn't pick it up if it lay by the roadside. Just that innate sense of the danger of the ring. And that's what I feel really makes Faramir's character shine, having that strength and that humility and self-worth to know that this is bad and to not lust for this object of power. Unfortunately, in the film, and I understand the reasons for it, they do, because I've watched all the extra bits, they do talk about why they made the changes they did. And because they wanted to show the power of the ring and the lure of the ring, they actually have Faramir taking the hobbits back with him and wanting to use the ring and claim it for Gondor. And I understand why they did it. I get all of that, but it still felt like they betrayed Faramir. And I also think it's hard kind of with the lure of the ring, like the more you see it, the more it grips you and holds you. I think it's harder to break off later on than it is at the start. So I don't know. I can see what they were trying to do, but I prefer the book version for the character of Faramir. And yes, so Faramir got betrayed in the film, but I will cope with it. Also, we get to, we meet Rohan and the Riders of Rohan, and we spend time at Edoras, and then at Helm's Deep we have the big battle. And that was obviously expanded and brought out a lot more for the film. And I thought, because the film has a lot of Éowyn, I thought we got a lot more Éowyn, but I think that must have still be saved for the Return of the King. And also the Helm's Deep, I thought it was bigger. I thought that we'd get more in the book, but it felt like it was over quite quickly just because of how I compare it to the film. But I think with the books, it was a minor skirmish, a minor kind of point winning, and the battle with Saruman and the Ents was kind of more of the focus rather than Helm's Deep. And then they saved the big battles for the Return of the King, I think, but I have to reread Return of the King, obviously, so I could be totally wrong. So yeah, so that Helm's Deep felt slightly disappointing just because I think I had the film in my head so much. And obviously I was hoping for more Éowyn as well, which we didn't get. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, but one thing I really like about the book that is different to the film is we get the Ents and they're sort of Ents, but are more like alive trees that come to help support the men of Rohan in the battle for Helm's Deep. So this is kind of the mysterious backup that Gandalf brings with him. But in the film, they use elves. And I understand why they do that. I think we needed more elf impact so the characters didn't fade away. We had elf storylines going on. And I think it said at other points that elves were fighting other battles on different fronts. So it was a way of kind of merging it all together. And also the amount of CGI work that would have had to have gone into tree fighting would have been crazy. So I appreciate that, but it was almost like the elves were the nod to the Ents in, well, the like second level of Ents in here. And I really enjoyed the Saruman takedown, we don't kind of see it firsthand so much. We have Merry and Pippin telling the story of their adventures with Legolas, Gimli and Aragorn all kind of joined up together again and enjoying pipeweed. And all of that was so funny, and I enjoyed the storytelling of it, and I enjoyed the love of the food and all of those things that just add to it. So just that kind of warmth and whimsicalness really came through there. And the Frodo Sam journey was the bit that really, really gripped me. And the story they have with Smeagol / Gollum, I loved all of that. I love their relationship. I love how they keep going. I love the difficulties they faced. I love their different strengths. You know, Sam is being really wary. He's like being the physical pusher, the optimist, keeping it going. The food was brilliant in here. And then Frodo's got more of the higher ground morality, looking at kind of the forgiveness of Smeagol and trying, like, although he's aware that Gollum very much lurks there, he's still trying to hold on to that good part of Smeagol. And I think it's because of that kindred he has with the bearing the ring that was really beautiful to see. And what I do enjoy about these very old school books is that you do have that kind of classic system of honour in these books. Like, I know there are a lot more kind of realistic books out there about, you know, you are honourable but you lost situation. But I do enjoy kind of the honourableness in here and the keeping of your word and just the little etiquettes and things that they have in here, and the way they kind of intermingle and the lore and the stories. I do love all of that in these books. But yes, Sam and Frodo's journey was brilliant. Again, it slightly differs from the film with how the last part plays out. But I really enjoyed it. I was gripped on all of this. I felt the same terror at the end as well, and the realisation that Sam has of what's gone on. And I really want to pick up the third book, but I don't think I'm going to get to it anytime soon, especially because I haven't got the audiobook. So I think I might wait, and maybe in a month, or I can plan it in financially, get another month of Scribd and listen to Return of the King, because I'm enjoying listening to Andy Serkis. Didn't quite get all of Andy Serkis because I ran out. I think I had another 2 hours left, or an hour left of this to read. So I had the last 4 chapters that I just read by myself, but it was brilliant. I had a great time with this book. So much fun. Okay, on to the books that I hadn't even picked up at the end of week 3. So I had these 3, which were all prompts for the Magical Readathon. Sadly, I did not get to The House with Chicken Legs. This is the one that I'm currently in the middle of reading. It's a fantasy middle grade by Sophie Anderson. It's been on my list for a long time to read. I had it for my birthday last May. I'm really excited to be reading it, so I'm just going to enjoy myself in May reading this book. And thankfully, G has said that all the books you didn't manage to finish in the spring equinox, as long as you read them by the time the autumn equinox comes around, that's absolutely fine to continue with your studies. So there we go. It does sadly mean that Realmathon will not be getting those 10 whimsy points though, sadly. So the books I did read. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is my first introduction to Maas. I've not read anything by her before. And this is probably my first fantasy romance. I don't think I've read any. I've read fantasy books with a romance subplot, but I haven't read a full-on fantasy romance before. So I was very intrigued to see how I was going to find this. And I had a great ride. Moving my sheet. Yes. There we go. Sorry, just sorting out my notes here. Stay. Yes, so I had a great ride with this book. The protagonist mainly worked for me. There were a couple of moments where I was like, really, that's your choice? What are you doing? It's very clear that you shouldn't do that. But it was fine in the end. Nothing terribly catastrophic happened. It all kind of worked out for the best, but it was just one of those moments I was like, this wasn't a clever plan. This wasn't a clever plan. But I know what I'm getting myself in for. It is what it is. So yes, no, the protagonist's favourite was fine. I enjoyed the atmosphere in the mortal realm and that whole kind of starving, wintry, cold, living in the woods, living off scraps, survival mode. I really enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed that atmosphere. I was pleased we entered the realm of scary fairies. I wasn't sure what the Fae rep was going to be like in here. I haven't read a lot of Fae books. I enjoy my classic good elves from Lord of the Rings, and I enjoy my Pratchett terrifying elves. And this was definitely on the scary fairy vibe, which is what I wanted. More of the folk tale, you know, be wary of these people. I enjoyed a lot of that in here as well. Yeah, there were bits that I enjoyed more than others, and yeah, kind of did what it said on the tin, really. It worked. That was it. Yes, I enjoyed the Beauty and Beast retelling of it. I think I had heard vaguely, but I'd totally forgotten that this was a Beauty and Beast kind of inspired story, and I enjoyed all of that. I could see the inspiration. I could see everything in here. I enjoyed a lot of the secondary characters in here as well. I will be continuing the series. This is part of my chatty challenge where I am doing the 7-year TBR of popular books that I've missed out on from the Goodreads Choice Awards, and the Court of Silver Flames, the 4th book, is on there. So this is the first book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and so I will be continuing until I get to that one. The spoiler part comes in here. I am slightly concerned that we are heading towards a love triangle. I do not enjoy reading about love triangles. It makes me really uncomfortable because I know someone's going to get hurt. It makes me feel a bit icky. So I'm not really up for that. I do enjoy the character, was it Rysand? Yeah, I really like the character Rysand. I think it was one of my favourite characters along with Lucian and her older sister Nesta. But I just feel if he's being thrown into the mix, then everything that kind of has gone on previously with Feyre and Tamlin's relationship, that whole, you know, die for you kind of fantasy, it just kind of belittles that aspect of it. I mean, sure, it might be realistic, you fall in and out of love, you change your mind, but in a fantasy romance, I want that dream of those two souls destined to be together, will do anything for each other. that kind of theme being sold, really. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about the second book. We will see. I hear that it is highly preferred to this one, so I'll find out. We will see. So, sorry. Okay, I think I've got my note prompts under control now from falling over. So the final book I read is Loud Black Girls. This is an anthology of essays that has been put together by Yomi Adegoke and Elizabeth Uvabene. And this was not the book I was planning to read. I was planning to read, as part of my chatty challenge that I've just referred to, I was planning to read Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman. It's a collection of short stories, and that's what I needed to fulfill a particular prompt in the Magical Readathon. It was in my library. I'd seen that it was available. There were 2 copies. I didn't reserve it because I didn't want to pay £1. I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to walk past the library and get it. That's totally fine. By the time I got to the library, both copies had gone. So that failed. But this is why readathons are fantastic, because it made me pick up this book. I've never picked up this book if I hadn't thought about it. It's not come onto my radar. I've not heard anyone else talk about it. But I was looking in the YA section for some other books around sort of like mythology retellings and different cultures retellings, and this was just sat on one of those kind of faced out highlighting shelves, and it caught my eye. I picked it up, and then I saw that it had a foreword by Bernardine Evaristo. I love Bernardine Evaristo. And then I read this on the back. So Yomi Adegoke and Elizabeth Uvabene, authors of the acclaimed Slay in Your Lane, a book I will now need to find, The Black Girl's Bible, invite the next generation of black women in Britain, authors, journalists, actors, activists and artists, to explore what it means to them to exist in these turbulent times. Loud Black Girls offers funny, touching and ultimately insightful perspectives on the question of what's next. Sold, 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 sold. So I picked it up. As you can see, it's just a little book. So what I would like you to take away from here is read this book. It's very easy to pick up. You can pick it up and put it down. There's lots of essays in here, and they delve with a huge amount of different, that's the word I wanted, different topics. So all very different individuals, with something different to say about being a loud black girl. I think it was collated in 2019, so this is post-COVID, but it's still relevant. Everything in here is still totally relevant and really, really insightful. It explores motherhood, it explores sort of inner shame, because we all live in a white patriarchal world. The whole world has this whole white male patriarchy around it, as sold as the norm. It looks at finance, which is something I never thought about. It looks at food and the emotions behind it and the culture behind it. It looks at securing the bag, which is a new phrase I have now learnt, meaning if you're self-employed, being able to grab that money to be able to pay your rent, which is something, having always been employed, I've never had to think about or deal with. So having that securing the bag motive versus your own kind of morality about wanting to promote your community in the best possible way. So all of that was just absolutely so fascinating for me. I found all of this really interesting, but the second story in here that deals with motherhood by someone who's promoting black motherhood, which made me think, oh yeah, we don't get a huge amount of stories on that or shown about that. Again, my white privileged glasses are still on my face. But it was just really powerful about the way these parents wanted to raise their children, and in particular their daughter, to not be with that whole mantra of seen and not heard. They wanted her to have a voice. They wanted her to be able to speak out about things and have that from an early age, so she doesn't have to unlearn it when she's older. And it was just a really simple concept of that she was asked by an older relative to take away their plate. And it's a simple thing, and me as a people pleaser would be like, yes, of course, darling, go on, take the plate away, be nice, say that you're polite and respectful. Whereas the parents, they listen to their child talking back, but not in like a disrespectful way, just very clearly like, why? Because I'm older. Nana's older. She doesn't ask me to take her plate for them. Why don't you do it yourself? What's wrong with your legs? And it just kind of opened up that whole kind of concept of they wanted their daughter to be able to stand their ground, reason things out for herself, and not feel that she had to do something just because society expected her to do it. And it was just really powerful, just that really simple thing. And yeah, I found it really, really inspiring. So I cannot imagine how uplifting and relatable and empowering this book is to read as a Black person, particularly a woman, girl, or someone who is non-binary. That is not within my capability to comment on and say it's not my experience. But what I can say, I do have an authoritative voice on the opinion of myself as a privileged white person reading this. And I think it's so important for all people to read this book, not just women or girls or non-binary people, but men too, because feminism is for everyone. And I think that hasn't always been shown. Like, Black voices within it have had different struggles to the white voices within it, and they've been ignored and dismissed. And it's not just the fight of Black women or brown girls or marginalised non-binary people. Everyone needs to take up the mantle and fight this fight. We all need to be open. We all need to open our eyes and our ears and listen and fight for our sisters as well. Things that we who are privileged might deem as insignificant or trivial, by reading and listening and learning, like by reading this, we can then learn that actually they're not trivial. All these ignored small things, they mount up and build to become this oppressive social norm that continues to crush Black women, and especially Black trans women, to the bottom of this period and underground, basically, in this visual hypothesis. Which the pyramid analogy is something that I have lifted from this book. I did try to find it as I was flicking through, but I couldn't find where it came in, but I'm definitely sure it came from this book. It's not my own visual, but I loved it so much. I was like, yes, you have the white men at the top, and then it all simmers down, and at the very bottom you have Black women, and then underneath them Black trans women. So things that society is sold is this kind of image of the loud Black woman or the angry Black woman. Those labels are something we really need to speak out against. Whereas a white woman who could be saying the same things in the same tone of voice would be called authoritative and passionate. A Black woman doing the same would be called aggressive. So this is institutionalized casual racism, and it needs to be eradicated. We can't let our sisters fight alone. We need to, because they get exhausted. It's not just their fight. We need to stand up. We need to stand with them, and we need to call it out. We need to start saying things like, why are you calling her aggressive? What are you listening to what she's talking to and what she's saying? She's passionate about it. She's talking about it. It matters to her. Why are you just dismissing her as being aggressive? So the importance of this book is to promote loud Black girls so that they are not pressurized by society to be quiet. They're not afraid of that label. They're not going to be afraid to keep being pushed down again and again. We want Black women to be able to speak and to be loud and unapologetic. But as white people, we have to listen. So, read this book. There we go. That's what I have to say on that one. So, that is everything I've read. I'm now going to wrap up the readathons. So, for the magical readathon, the Orilium, for the Rift Architect, I had read 2 books. I was continuing 2 books. And I had to read 1 book, which I achieved. So, Rift Architect is completed. So where's it gone? No, not this one, fail. It's this one. Let's do that again. That's my Rift Architect. Scythe, not Two Towers. So Loud Black Girls I read for the Spells and Incantation course class, and for that one we were studying the anti-gravity spell, and that was read a collection of short stories or essays. I also needed to take the class of Psionics and Divination, and for that one it was the, I can't say this word, Clestanians. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. But anyway, we had to read a book set in the future, which was Scythe. And then I also read Inscription, and we were looking at the glyph strength, and for that it was an intimidating read, which this really was for me. So there we go. I can go on to pass more exams to be a Rift Architect. The other one that I was unsure about doing was the Dreamwalker. So for that one, I had read 3 books. I was continuing 2 books, and I needed to read 2 books, which was this one and this one. So unfortunately I didn't finish reading this book, so I just need to read it before August. So this one was Law, and it was read for the class they were studying mythology, so it was read a book inspired by mythology or mythology retelling. And this is a story of the Yagas, so it involves Baba Yaga and her house on chicken legs, which is a Russian folktale. So that will be read. I've already spoken about these 2. Same things apply for them for the Dreamwalker. So the other class I had for the Dreamwalker was Alchemy, and we were looking at the potion to do with love. Oh, hold on, I did write it down. Yes, the Potion of Infatuation, and that was read a book featuring romance. So there we go. On to Realmathon. So I spoke about the Lord of the Rings previously and all the points I was going to do for Realmathon. This is a decreasing points. And these ones I've also already spoken about. Blah, blah. And it's all going wrong. Do you know what? You can just stay like that. So these ones I need to talk about with Realmathon. So none of these are military fantasy, and none of these are whimsical. So I've not been able to get as many points for Realmathon, but that's because I already had so many other commitments and I was just fitting what I was reading into Realmathon. I have so many plans. I was hoping to start this year and not book myself in for many plans, so I could the readathon was going to be my focus, but that never happens. It never works. I get excited about buddy reads. I ended up making my own challenge that I wasn't expecting to do. So hey ho. So what have I got first? Scythe. So for this one, it definitely fits into, I'm doing all increasing prompts for Scythe. So build a training ground, the apprentice trope, to apprentice Scythe. That definitely ticks the box, so that's +3 points. Medic training, a book with mental health or healing. They do a lot of healing of people in here. So that ticks that box, so that's +2 points. Supply run, an author from a different country. Pretty sure Neil Schusterman is not, I'm really dry. I'm just going to grab a drink of water. Yes, Neil Schusterman is not from the UK. He lives in California, so that definitely counts. So that is plus another 2 points. Increase the population. So a book with a parent and child relationship or a mentor and a mentee. So these apprentice Scythes have mentors to help them through their apprenticeship. Plus 2 points. Build a school, a YA or a middle grade. This is YA. Plus 2 points. So that is a total of +11 for Serene. The Wife's Tale. I am decreasing points for the Wife's Tale. So, try new magic. Read a book out of your comfort zone. Massively, massively so. -3 points. A war veteran, a TBR vet. So this is a Shelterbox book club pick, and that was definitely from last year. I can't remember when last year, but at some point last year. This is the first book from the Shelter book. This is the oldest book from the Shelterbox book club. From that box, from Shelterbox, that I hadn't read, so it's definitely a TBR vet. So that's -3 points. Cut off their magic, an isolated setting. So a lot of this is set in the village and their house in the village, and also Itamengu feels quite isolated from her family and from her friends because it dictates that she needs to stay in the house for most of the time. So it definitely felt isolated. So that's -2. Overthrow the King. Read an indie publication or a self-published book. So this is published by Fourth Estate. I think it's called Fourth Estate. Yes. This is published by a company called Fourth Estate. And I think they've only got a publishing house in London, so it's definitely independent publishing. I've got quite a lot of their books now, I think mainly from this, but also some of the other ones that I've looked, non-fiction I've looked for has been Fourth Estate. Red on the cover, First Blood. So you can see there's lots of red detailing here on the book. So that's -1 point. So it's a total of -11. And as Verdania has been quite commenty about taking away from Calamus, and because as far as I know they are the realm that is winning, we're going to take away from them. Okay. ACOTAR. So this is not a whimsical fantasy, it's definitely a fantasy romance. So if I was in the Bale team, this would have been 10 points, but I'm not. So this is all increasing points. Negotiate a ceasefire. An enemies to lovers trope. Yes. This definitely counts because Fae and mortals, not friends. Medic training. Mental health or healing. So in this book there is definitely healing needed for a lot of injuries in here. So that's +2 points. Attend a feast. A book featuring food. Food is kind of the main motivation at the beginning of the story because that family is starving, and then we have very elaborate feasts once she is over the wall and in the Fae Kingdom. +2 points. Supply run. Book with an author from a different country. Sarah J. Maas is from America. I'm from the UK. +2 points. Make an alliance. A book with romance in. It's a fantasy romance. +1 point. That's a total of +10 points for this book. I'm going to make a book tower now. And finally, Loud Black Girls. So try new magic, read a book out of your comfort zone. Non-fiction books are always out of my comfort zone, and collections of essays especially, so +3 points. Build an armory. A colour in the name of the book. Black. Oh, sorry, not plus, minus. We're doing minus points for this one. -3 points. Seek magical aid. An author where you live. So this is all written by Black British authors. So -2 points. Overthrow a king. Into your self-publishing. Again. Yeah. It's Fourth Estate again. See, I like quite a lot of their books. Self-publishing. -2 points. Send in spies. Learn about culture. Oh yeah, send in spies to learn about their culture. A book with any kind of representation. So we obviously have BIPOC representation in here. We have LGBTQ plus representation in here. So that definitely counts, and that is -1 point. So that is a total of -11 for this book, and it will be going to Calamus realm as well. So there we go. Readathons are complete. Realmathon done. Nearly passed my classes for Orilium, and I've read all these books in April. There will be a whole wrap up coming of my stats and everything I've read throughout the month of April that I'm going to be posting soon. I think in May what I'm going to be doing, because I'm not going to be having readathons to recap on as much, I'm going to be doing like bi-weekly overviews of what I've been reading instead of weekly ones. And that'll just kind of give me a chance to kind of read a bit more and take it a little bit easier and come up with some other videos that I want to do as well. So thank you so much for watching. This is a really long one. It's nearly an hour. I'm sorry, but it's one shot. I had a lot to say about quite a lot of these books. I can't edit anything, so you've got all the and also I wanted to kind of wrap up all my readathons as well. So if you made it to the end, then, you know, do a map of the world in there. So, you know, the Realmathon and life in the world. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, do a map of the world emoji so I know that you stayed the course, even if you haven't got anything to say. But please do talk to me in the comments. I always love to chat in the comments. It's so nice. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a like. It really makes me happy to see videos are liked. I'm going to do them anyway, but it's always nice to feel your work is being appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed already and you feel like doing so, please do that. Happy reading, everyone. I'll see you in May.